One of your friends probably just posted day 3 sober October, and you may have seen alcohol-free canned mocktails and beers everywhere, and they seem to sponsor every podcast.
Do you want one?
You can pose.
First time ever, the football club Arsenal has entered into an official partnership with a non-alcoholic beer.
Plus, the biggest alcohol brands' stocks are crashing. So this week, I want to do a deep dive into the wellness trend that is Gen Zs and Millennials giving up alcohol. In our prime, in our 20s.
A growing number of people are going without alcohol this month.
What's driving this shift? Why are people doing this? And is it really worth ditching all those late night fun moments? Now, specifically, this trend doesn't just mean sobriety. It means a lot of people going sober curious. And what is sober curious? Just we have to define off the bat. Sober curious is often defined as having the option to question or change one's drinking habits for mental or physical reasons. Alcohol was just a way of life for our parents, Gen X, boomers. You just after work would crack open a cold one, you meet friends, go to the bar. And now Gen Z and Millennials specifically are just questioning that social norm. Some full on going sober, some dabbling into sober curious, and some just reevaluating their own relationship with alcohol. And the stats reflect that. I was listening to the Morning Brew podcast recently and listening to these stats. Wine beverage brand Constellation Brands lost $2.5 billion related to wine spirits. Just in the last quarter alone, their wine was at a 7% loss. June Duckhorn's portfolio cut its wine investment. Absolute Vodka brand also sold out all of its wine, so wine is suffering. And we're going to talk about other beverages later on. Now, I have several reasons why I think this cultural shift and what I think this means for just business and wellness in general, but let's start with the real turning point. 2020. Keltie, this is probably the 20th time in the last 20th video I've mentioned this. And I think there's many factors. First, number one, I'm going to label as people went past the line. I think there's unwritten rules. And I know it's like for me, if I give up something, it's 100%, it's gone. Like an energy drink. I give up energy drinks, it's done. But then I just have one when I'm hungover and just one when I'm traveling and then just one on Saturdays. And once you break the line, it's like a slippery slope. And I think that's what happened with drinking is up before the pandemic. It was like 5 o'clock after work, you start drinking. And then it was just, we were never at work. And some people were bored. And then it kind of just became a little joke. We were all drinking at random times. And I think just some people were like, I might as well crack open one at 3. Might as well have one in our Zoom meeting. We had Zoom meeting parties. I know so many people personally, they weren't alcoholic, but then they were like having mimosas every day. It was like, we have nothing else to do and the world might end. So a lot of people who just consider themselves weekend drinkers, after work drinkers, were suddenly drinking all the time. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that probably continue that, and we'll talk more about alcoholism later on. And I had friends and people I know that suddenly we were like, oh, yeah, this isn't good. I need to go healthy. And I feel after a couple months, they did like a complete 360 and like health and wellness really took off. Fitness culture really took off in COVID because people had the time for it. And I do think there's a shift with like being really unhealthy, drinking a lot, and suddenly being like, no, I'm cutting out 100% and I'm going to sign up for a half marathon. And at this exact same time in about 2021, 2022, I'm sorry you always have to hear them, but it was a big influence for a lot of people online. That Andrew Huberman episode about alcohol.
Acetaldehyde will build up in your body and cause more damage.
I think opened people's eyes, and we're going to talk the specifics of why it was so eye-opening later on in this video. But I just think that was the ripple effect as people were drinking too much. They wanted to go into health and wellness. And then we actually, for the first time, really learned why alcohol is so bad for us. A report from the Global Drug Survey in 2020 found that 40% of millennials reduced their alcohol intake during the pandemic to prioritize their mental and physical health, with many intending to keep up this behavior post-pandemic. So I think it was either right away you decide to hop on board, or you kind of went down the slippery slope and then you wanted to clean up your act. So let's talk different generations. Our parents, Gen X, boomers, forget the other ones, relationship with alcohol was definitely social. It was definitely after work. It was like almost a way to just take off the edge. It was seen as relaxing, just part of your day. You look forward to, you unwind at the end of the day with a beer or glass of wine. It was a form of stress relief, socialization, or a way to simply celebrate. And I think about the early 2000s of like paparazzi clubbing era.
If you wanna get high, it's all right.
Paris Hilton coming out of a club. Like it was so glamorized. This fun thing you look forward to. I remember being in my teens and being like, oh my God, I could be glamorous like Paris Hilton and just leaving this club, and it looked like so much fun. And I turned legal in the 2010s, and I remember there was still this glamorization of clubbing, and that was, especially in college, that was such a thing. And obviously drinking college thing is still a part of college, but it was a lot bigger, and that's what you did. You look forward to college parties, and I was so excited for it. Now, people who turned legal in the pandemic suddenly couldn't go to the clubs, and the missed this formative time. I'm not saying it's for the best or worst. We'll talk about that later. But I think a lot skipped 18 to 21. 18 is the legal drinking age where I'm originally from. But you turn 18 and 21, those few years you should be figuring out. You're suddenly like 24 and never step foot in a club, and you're like, I'm too old to be here, but I don't know how to be here. Or you missed all the college parties. Like, I think it was just like a rite of passage that never happened. A 2022 study from Gallup found that only 60% of adults in the US reported drinking alcohol, compared to 65% in 2019, showing a significant decline. Specifically among Gen Z, only 20% identify as regular drinkers, with more opting for non-alcoholic alternatives at social events. Reason number 5, replaced. Back to saying a lot of Gen Z is just no longer identifying as drinkers, and this is also millennials as well. I do think one of the many reasons, once again, there's many reasons, is the normalization of cannabis, especially in Canada and US. Once again, I'm sorry, this is a very Canada focused and US focused video. I love, if you're European, please leave your guys' own opinion. I would love to hear how it's like affecting drinking culture, especially in places where, like, I think of France is like, that's such a part of the way. Like, you're allowed to drink at work in France. I'm pretty sure like that's fine. But yeah, I'd love to hear that. Well, this is actually probably a good time to mention before we start talking about cannabis, this is an opinion piece. As much as I'm going to show some stats, this is very much my own meta-analysis of all the stats and observations I've made and just trying to form my own opinions. So don't take this to your professor and say, this is fact because the YouTuber said it. I've always found it quite funny we almost self-prescribe for ourselves when it comes to party substances. Like, alcohol might not work for you. Like, how you need a prescription drug depending on where you are, if you're neurodivergent, to balance out your levels. If you have ADHD or OCD, you need to find the right balance for you. But like, we just wing it when it comes to drinking and all that. We don't know if it's going to make us happier or sadder, and how different alcohol processes and cannabis and all that. And I think a lot of people have realized alcohol doesn't work for them. It doesn't make them happy. It makes them sad, anxious, versus saying that cannabis that's now legal and they know they can get the proper doses, that's their preferred choice now because it reacts better with their body. And it would make sense it reacts differently with everyone. If it's legal and if you're underage, once again, don't do drugs and don't drink alcohol. And just even like, that's definitely your like after hours fun. But even like, there's more supplements coming out. I think of like nootropics and things like that. They're allowing people to like work throughout the day. And I can imagine, say you spend a lot of money on this like fancy supplement to make you more productive and focused in, or you just even take that to go to a club or an after work event to be more dialed in. Why would you drink and then be hungover? And that completely defeats the purpose of taking this nootropic the next day because you're just tired. So I think things like nootropics, functional mushrooms, not the magic one, functional ones that are adaptogens, are definitely also stealing a little bit of people's disposable income. For example, like adaptogens that I take from AG1, which will be the sponsor of today's video. I love AG1 because it's a daily functional nutrition supplement that supports a whole body health. I love that it has your adaptogens, antioxidants, multivitamin, all in one, which helps you save money. Instead of buying like 8 different supplements, you can just have this one high quality that is NSF certified, which is my important reason for using it. I like it because not every day I can get in every single nutrient. So it's just kind of, I know I'm covered in a wide variety, and why that's so important for someone like myself who works out and has a very active life. I just want to make sure I'm fueling properly. And that of course means calories, carbs, proteins, fats, fibers, and I'm not getting that from AG1. It's not a meal replacement, but it's just really helping me make sure I get a wide variety of like those micronutrients you need. That way I can perform at my best, whether it be at work or on a run or in a workout class. I just have those wide variety of micronutrients that help with so many systems in the body. And once again, knowing it's high quality and trusted because it's trusted by athletes, professionals around the world, and some of the biggest science wellness podcasters we know that we look up to and get advice. They're good enough for them, good enough for me. Peter Attia takes it, I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, he's a big fan of it, so that's why I take it. And this month, I actually have a special code for you guys. If you use my link down below, you'll get a 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and not 5, but 10 free travel packets with your purchase of AG1. Thank you, AG1, for sponsoring this video. Okay, we've talked a lot about just like the factors and things that are leading up, but like specifically, why are people saying they're giving it up? One, I think people are just trying it. They're just taking a break to see how it affects them mentally and physically. 2, I think some people are not necessarily going sober. I think like how we're more mindful of our eating and working out, I think we're becoming more mindful of our alcohol consumption. 3, just improved health. I think people are just trying to focus more on their wellness, and that includes things like sleep quality. 4, improved digestion. Gut health is everywhere on TikTok. Is there a fitness influencer girly that hasn't mentioned gut health? It's just a thing. And one of the biggest things, it's not really good for our microbiome, is alcohol. We're drinking that, it's gonna burn. Yeah, this is not the best thing for it. So a lot of people are trying to help it, give up alcohol. But, you know, plead the fifth, alcohol is fermented. Fermented things are good for your microbiome. Just kidding, that is a joke. That is a joke. It is not considered a fermented, it is fermented, but like also, riddle me that. scientists. 5, improve mood. Anxiety is such a thing. It will ruin your week. If you like supposed to be relaxed and rejuvenated after hard work and you drink and then you have anxiety and then you don't sleep and then you start the whole work week with anxiety and anxiety. It's just not a good place for your mental health. 6, fitness goals. With fitness becoming more in, I think a lot of people have specific fitness goals. Signing up for a 10K, Ironman, triathlon. They might be joining a Pilates class or just like a berries challenge. And I think with that and people having these focus on their fitness goals, they don't want to go on their long run hungover on a Saturday. And number 7, the reduced risk of health issues. This is where I'm going to talk more about that Andrew Huberman episode and why I think it impacted us so much. Around that time also, there was a lot of studies coming out about how alcohol is a carcinogen. And none of us thought alcohol was good for us. Maybe flashback 20, 30 years, those people drinking. There was a lot of like the antioxidants in wine and drinking's good for you. And so I think we knew it wasn't good, but I know for myself, even I always thought of it as like, oh, it's bad for your liver. You're eating away your liver. But I never really thought of it as like, this could cause cancer and that we're drinking a poison. I never thought of it like that. I just like, oh, this is bad for us. You know, eating candy is bad for you, but moderation. And according to the CDC and a lot of studies is just, yeah, it is a carcinogen. I don't know why, because everything's a carcinogen, so you don't think of it as like, no, it directly correlates and it makes sense. You're drinking a poison every day. And I think a lot of us went, oh, I know so many friends who went sober for a year after that Huberman episode. And so that's only my own reflection. I'd love to hear from you guys. But I think it was just eye-opening for a lot of us being like, oh, this caused so many health issues. And I'm not sober. I'm not. I still enjoy drinking. But it really made me reflect on my drinking habits. But now, that's obviously a very complicated issue. I'm not a doctor, so I can't really tell specifically if it's going to cause things and all that. But for me, specifically, it eliminated my, oh, I'll just have a drink with dinner. Just having a drink randomly, you know, friends go out. I'm like, I don't see the point of it. I don't even get a good buzz. I'm just drinking and it's poison. And it stopped like hard for me that I was like, no, unless I'm going out and it's really worth it, I'm not just going to have a drink to have a drink. I don't care. Like, I'll just deal with the social anxiety. Reason number 8, obsession with sleep. In between sleep trackers becoming the norm, Matthew Walker being on every second podcast, reaming down our throats the why we sleep book, every wellness podcast just being like, sleep is the most important thing. Sleep, sleep, sleep. Myself included. Sleep, sleep, sleep. If you watch the channel, I've just shoved it down your throats. And so all of us are really hyper-focused on sleeping. And if there's one thing that destroys your quality of sleep, it's drinking. I think we used to think, oh, you have a drink and it helps you fall asleep. And now we all know that, yeah, you'll fall asleep, but that's passing out. It's not really falling asleep. And your sleep quality, your REM and deep are just ruined from drinking. This is actually what made me hooked on my Oura Ring. Is I thought this was crap. I was like, it's just some dumb algorithm and it doesn't affect anything. If I have a drink, not get drunk, a drink, my health stats are through the roof. And there's no way on the Oura Ring to be like, oh, I'm having a drink. It doesn't know. But suddenly my body temperature, whoop, my heart rate up, HRV plummets. Everything, my REM sleep down, quality of sleep down, deep sleep down, everything just down or up, whatever's the worst. And it's mind-blowing wondering now if I go out, ooh, I just don't even look the next day. I don't need that negativity in my life. But that was so impactful for me. And I think a lot of people now, Apple Watch tracks your sleep, Oura Rings, a lot of people are getting Garmin's, all these things. And we're just like a lot more connected to our sleep and realizing how much alcohol does affect it. Sometimes it's worth it, but yeah, not all the time. Speaking of worth it, next reason, community. Now, I actually want to talk about a funny story that happened with me and my stepsister. We were driving back from Drumheller for my brother's wedding. Oh my God, congratulations. Anyways, we were talking about religion. I know, stick with me. And how music festivals, when you go to music festival, that music playing and you're dancing around with everyone, it's so therapeutic. But that same feeling you can have at a church, like a really fun church where everyone's singing and dancing with the pastor. And it goes back to tribes. Like we used to dance around the fire and sing and chant. Like there's something about humans singing and dancing together, specifically to music or to even just a drum beat. It's a part of us. It's amazing. That's why I love music festivals. And for the longest time, we drank just to reduce the social anxiety around. It's a little awkward to dance. A lot of us aren't dancers. And that's why those are so fun. And they're saying so human nature about dancing and music with people. It's just in our DNA and it does make us so happy. Now with that, I think that was one of the ways we found community for a long time. It was the local pub at 5 p.m. on a Friday that our parents went to. And it was us, you know, going out with friends for drinks and then dancing. And it is so fun. But I do think there's momentum that's been built over the last few years. I think 5-6 years ago, even if you were saying you were sober curious or anything, it was kind of like you were isolated. Like there wasn't that many people doing it. But now that slowly a few people are doing it and it's expanded and influencers are talking about it and you have another friend that's being sober curious and it's getting more normalized, there's more events and community that people can get that same feeling of music and dancing without going out drinking. I'm just going to use an example. Diplo just had a 5-kilometer run club. Yeah, it was in Seattle and I think San Francisco, and it was like 5-kilometer race he DJ'd after, and it was like in the middle of the day. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but that's so much fun. And like, you don't have to negatively impact your life to get that feeling of a music festival. And obviously, yes, you can go to a music festival and not drink, but everyone's drunk around you. And as someone who's a bartender for many years, being the sober one amongst drunk people sometimes sucks. In the UK, around 30% of people aged 16 and 24 consider themselves not drinker. And sober events like alcohol-free bars and sober festivals start becoming more widespread. A 2021 survey conducted by DrinkAware found that 26% of millennials in the US are actively participating in sober social events or limiting their drinking. So let's bring in my own experience as someone who talks openly on this channel. I do love drinking. I love having fun. I was just drinking this weekend at my brother's wedding. But with the sober movement, it's really made me reflect over the last like 4 years, specifically on like my own relationship with alcohol. I actually got a comment on like 2 videos ago, and someone was like, Keltie, I'm worried about your drinking. Like, are you okay? Because I mentioned I drank a little bit because I went to Champagne. I went to Champagne, France. That was my birthday. So yeah, in a month I drank like 3 times. But when I do the math, I was like, I only drink maybe 8 to 10 times in the whole year. So once a month less than that, then just didn't drink for 5 weeks. And that's what's worked for me. And I used to feel a lot of guilt if someone came up to me and we were out at dinner or something, and I knew we were going home after this. And I just realized if I'm not going to dance at some point, I don't want to drink. There's no point for me. Not always, but I realized I never got any enjoyment out of that random drink. But I felt guilty because like everyone else around was having a drink and like I have to, otherwise it's weird. And now like with the sober movement happening and it be more common phrase to be sober curious or just not to drink at every social event, I feel a lot better to be like, oh no, I'm just not drinking today. And it's not so like, why? I'm just like, oh, I just don't feel like it. And that's the extent of it. And I know for me, I feel a lot more comfortable versus I used to feel a lot of pressure. Now don't get me wrong, we're going to Vegas. I'm going to go out drinking. I'm going to party. Now with that, I'm going to mention one thing, another, not reason, but something to talk about alcoholism. Now, this video is really meant to talk about people who are just choosing not to drink, not because they have a problem. This is different than sobriety. This is more sober curious. People, they're considering a life without alcohol. It's not that they have a problem. And yeah, obviously it's murky. There's some people who are like, oh, I kind of have a bit of a problem. I don't really like how it affects my life, versus someone who's a severe alcoholic and has to choose sobriety and has to completely eliminate it from their life. And it's murky, but we're talking about 2 separate things. This is so more just choosing. That's the difference. I think 10 years ago, if you were saying you were going sober, it meant sobriety. It meant I was an alcoholic and I have to give it up because I have an addiction. And for a long time, I think as soon as you told anyone like, oh, I don't drink, they're like, oh, it was like, oh, you have a problem. And now it's a lot like, oh, cool. Moving on, like, it's just like, you just choose not to. Like, I choose not to do drugs, and it's not because I have a drug problem. I just choose not to do it. And I also think with the normalization of mental health among Gen Z and millennials is we just have better coping mechanisms, or we're more educated on options. I know talking to my friends, and sometimes we talk too much about therapy talk, but the fact that we go to therapy and that it's not stigmatized and that we have all these terms and just education on it. And I think we talk about like, oh, I was using this as a negative coping mechanism. And we view alcohol as a negative coping mechanism now. And we're kind of like aware of that. And it doesn't eliminate it. It's not like, oh, no millennial or Gen Z has a drinking problem. I'm not saying that. I just think there's a bit more of awareness about it and we have more options. Like, I've had many negative coping mechanisms in my life. And sometimes you don't even realize it until you reflect back or you go get therapy. But I just think we realize that in this focus on mental health, we're more likely to turn to better coping mechanisms instead of just being like, oh yeah, beer at the end of the day does take the edge off. It does, but that anxiety's coming for you tomorrow. But with that, if you are suffering with alcoholism in your family or yourself, I've talked about before, it's something that, yeah, without going into details because it involves other people, it's something that has impacted much of my life, and I just want to give you a hug. I'm going to put some resources on the screen, and you might not have a problem, but having someone near you that has a problem is almost just as impactful sometimes and hard to deal with, and I'm just going to give you a hug, and it's not easy. And so I just didn't want to skip over this. This is not the topic of the video, but I couldn't talk about giving up alcohol and not mention alcoholism and sobriety. And if you are like recovering alcoholic and have gone sober and you're embracing life sobriety, I just want to stop and just give you a clap. That is so unbelievable, and you should be so proud of yourself. I wish I could just give you a high five because it just takes so much willpower, and you're amazing. And if you're watching this video and made it through, I would love to hear down in the comments. Proud of you, so proud of you. Anyways, I gotta jump back to the happiness, but you know, love you. Next up, hobbies. Call me crazy, but I feel Gen Z millennials, we are really sick of staring at our screen. We know screens aren't good for us, just constant doom scrolling, and we're tired of it. So I think a lot of us are trying to get hobbies outside of staring at a screen. I've picked up scrapbooking for my mental health when I'm bored on the weekend. And I think the rise of like wellness culture has made us really focused on our morning routines, our night routines, and like morning runs, all that. And with that kind of shift to like that routine wellness culture is like, we know drinking is going to impact it the next day. And so a lot of us are like, no, but like I want to go for a run in the morning, or I have all these like exciting things to look forward to that aren't drinking. And I think that can be one. Now I'll also mention that's for like the people trying to get hobbies and off screen. I was talking to my boyfriend, he brought up a good point, is also, I think a lot of people are spending their time on screens and not going out and not drinking. On the flip side, like it's both extremes. Gaming culture is so big. So I think a lot of people who would have gone out to the club and drinking now are just staying home and gaming with the boys on weekends. Also on the flip side, I think a lot of us girlies are just scrolling. We're on Pinterest, we're on Instagram. Like I think a lot of us have that hook on social media and gaming and all these addictive things on our phone, which eliminates us from wanting to go out and be social because we get the social feeling from technology. On the flip side, I think some are so burned out from that, they just try and find hobbies away from it. So both sides taking away from drinking culture. Which, speaking of social media, next reason, photo evidence. Hear me out. I do have a suspicion and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think back to Paris Hilton. Peak clubbing days. What happened in those clubs? We saw the paparazzi photos outside, but inside the club, I would love to know the craziness.
So Paris, did you hit Lindsay?
Yeah, ticket. Yeah, ticket.
Ask her, she's right
Ticket.
there.
But no one knows, because guess what? There wasn't smartphones. Now, even back in my earliest day going to the bar, we did have smartphones, Instagram was a thing, but like it wasn't the same as what it is now. I think there's a lot more of like exposing culture. There's a lot of like, you are one mistake away, like one drunken scream from being canceled online, or you're like, you make some stupid comment on a video and you're viral, and then you're a hot Tua girl.
Oh, you gotta give him that huck.
She worked out for the positive, but there's a lot of memes out there and people exposed just because they're out drinking. And those things happened 10, 5, 15 years ago at clubs, but we didn't document it. And there wasn't like the exposed, like even if it went on the internet and ended up on Facebook and just like your local high school saw it, it didn't have the chance of virality of TikTok. And I think TikTok specifically has done this. Instagram didn't have virality until it realized TikTok is eating its lunch, so it did have to start feeding into algorithms more. I do think it was so hard to go viral even on Instagram up till like 2020, and there wasn't TikTok. So if you made a fool of yourself and even if it was posted online, it didn't have this like spreadable thing. Versus now on TikTok, I do think some of the younger generations are nervous about going out. First of all, they missed those formative times of learning how to, you turned 18 to 21 during the pandemic and suddenly, or 21 to 23, you're in your mid 20s, you're going to the club, you've never been there, and then you're also nervous, you have social anxiety, so many mental thoughts now. Like even myself, sometimes when I'm at the club, I'm like, oh, you gotta be on your best behavior. Not that I was ever on my bad behavior, but I'm like, if I fall off a speaker, someone's gonna film that and then I'm just gonna be a meme. The virality of TikTok, I do think we all have that subliminally in the back of our mind when we're drinking now. Not everyone, but once again, these are many reasons, many influences. Which leads me to my next reason, just social media in general. I do think also we are just more exposed to more ways of life. I think many years ago, before there's social media, we were just kind of your local newspaper and the big news, and we just saw celebrities online. It was just more local or just A-listers. We didn't have all this middle ground, and I think we just weren't exposed to many ways of life. And that was just like the way of life. You drink after work and you drink on the weekend, and the thought of like sober living, wellness, all that, it wasn't as prominent in front of us. But I think of like morning routine culture now. Social media influencers showing their healthy habits. I think that was my last video. And just like such a focus on glowing up. I think that's such a big category on YouTube and on TikTok. Glowing up culture and beauty culture. Oh my God, there is nothing bigger than beauty TikTok. Like that is the world. Alex Earl, just name everyone. Michaela, Everett, they're massive. And it's just like beauty TikTokers and that whole culture. Now, of course, Alex Earl does drink, so that just takes away. But I just mean like we all know morning culture, glow up culture, beauty culture is our lives now. It is the drama, it is our entertainment, it is our consumption, it is everywhere. And what do we all know destroys our skin and our beauty? And we all want that glass skin. Drinking, it does. I got this, my skin, I don't know if you can see it, is massive pimples. Why? Because I drank this weekend. And so one of the easiest ways to glow up is just to stop drinking. So there's that influence from social media. Also, things like Sober October and Dry January. You know what? Humans love a challenge. We love a little challenge. And when you see your friend, they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing Sober October for 30 days. It's our instinct. We're like, yeah, I'd like to do that. Let's improve our lives together. And also there's like a sense of community doing it online. Like I think we just have such a sense of community. That's so big. We used to have it at church, I think. Back in the day, communities were smaller, and like we're just slowly, this generation, trying to find our own communities because we almost have to build them from the ground up. So anytime it's like Sober October, I can do this with a bunch of people and feel part of something and have a challenge and feel successful at the end, and this feeling of accomplishment we just strive for, and just seeing people online doing it, I think there's a big influence on that culture. Participation in Dry January, a campaign encouraging people to quit alcohol for a month, has skyrocketed. In 2022, 35% of US adults reported participating in Dry January, a jump from 21% in 2019. I should also say that's probably just like people maybe not label it as like Dry January, but just the classic, we all do it. We drink so much in holiday parties and then we're like, yeah, I'm not gonna drink in January. The stat was a little iffy in that sense, but that's what I think it was getting at. Just like surveyed 100 people and 35% were like, yeah, I'm not going to drink for the next month. Also, I think there's just a lot more celebrities admitting they're sober. There's like all these people who are sober, and once again, it's not necessarily a problem. I think it was a problem, but just some have chosen that, and it just become more normalized that like, oh, this rich, famous celebrity just doesn't drink. It's actually quite crazy the amount of people we look up to have just chose a sober life, and it's just more normal. Reason number 15, recession. Yeah, I've got to mention it. It's the everything. Just everything's expensive. And guess what? Alcohol is a want, not a need. And when things are expensive and we have to cut costs, you cut the wants, not the needs. And what is one thing we definitely do not need in our life? Like, there's no nutritional value. It just makes you spend more money. Because I know my worst habit is, when I drink, is I love to online shop. That is a very bad habit. That's a very bad habit. Very bad. And so yeah, money's tight, so we're cutting it. See? Is that what you want, Dave Ramsey? Is that what you want? We're trying. We're trying to buy houses here. So we're cutting everything. Everything. Be patient with us. We're trying. In summary, I just love examining these like wellness trends, things that we notice around that are improving us. You know, sometimes they're negatively impacting. It really depends. And if you want to try it, I think it's awesome. And if it turns out to not serve you, that's okay as well. I know for me, it has been really nice to feel less pressure to just have those casual drinks that really didn't ever provide joy for me, but I won't lie, I still enjoy going out and having a great time when I really feel it's worth the hangover. And just to finish off with some stats to show just how impactful all these things have been. The global non-alcoholic beverage market was valued at $820 million in 2021 and is projected to grow to $1.7 billion by 2028, reflecting a rise in interest for alcohol-free options. And I think that's just another thing, it's options. Like, there's a bunch of these cocktails I love, like these little mocktails that taste so good. And I had like an Aperol Fritz with Ash when we went on Sunday. I don't like drinking on Sundays. I got to work on Monday. And so I just had that, and it looked like Aperol Fritz, and it was still that same like novelty of like a cute little beverage, but without the negative impacts of a hangover. And so there's just so many resources. It's not just like the one alcohol-free beer available at a bar. Like, there's so many different options now that still gives that fun little thing at the end of the day to look forward to. And when you go out with friends, having something there, and just even things like Liquid Death, who have really marketed it, that looks like a tall boy that you can have at the golf course, and it's just something to drink while everyone's drinking, so you're not sitting there so awkward, just like, what do I do with my hands? And I keep saying it because I want it to happen. I just hope we continue to push forward to having more hobbies, finding more third places. I think this loneliness epidemic is infecting us in so many ways we don't even realize, and I just think we don't have it. We don't have the local bar, and I don't think that's the solution, just to go there and then like we're working from home and everyone has like such sporadic jobs, so you're not at the same job for 20 years. Like, after college, a lot of us just feel very lost. So I'm hoping there's more of a push towards hobbies and us having places we can all go and play sports, and just places we can do that don't involve alcohol. And of course, there is times, don't get rid of the nightclubs. I'm not saying get rid of it. And I think that's the problem. I don't want that to be the only option. I want there to be more options. Because yeah, I want to go to Vegas, but I also want to enjoy being social without it negatively impacting my health. I want balance. I want that balance. And before that, it was kind of hard to have that balance. And now I think we're slowly getting there. More of us in Gen Z and Millennials are really feeling this need for that community and just other options. But if you want to hear of other options about me talking about Gen Z and Millennials, you can click this video here for my running video, but I probably will forget. So actually, I think it will appear here. YouTube will give you a recommendation. And if it is the running video, that's the algorithm being so smart that it's scary. But most importantly, have a great day. Go pet a dog. Love you guys. Bye.